Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by learning to develop yourself, your skills, your network, and more. I'm Brian, your host. Sometimes I do episodes where I wonder, is this the kind of thing that I should talk about that is good for my business? Because I own a bootcamp. We're getting really close to enrolling for the last cohort of the year. And then it struck me, do you even need a coding bootcamp to become a software engineer? I think about this a lot. I've written articles on the subject. I now own a coding bootcamp. I'm a software engineer. I came from a non-traditional background. You probably know the whole spiel if you've listened to this episode or know of me at all. But I think a lot, like, what about the people that are never going to go to Parsity or never want to go to a coding bootcamp and just have no desire to go back and spend $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 on a degree? Now, if I had a business manager, they'd probably say, Brian, don't do this episode. You're not going to get any clients from doing an episode like this. But you know what? I got enough clients. And by the way, if you want to be one of the last remaining people that gets accepted to Parsity and work with me one-on-one to pass our admissions challenge and hit the ground running, learn Git, GitHub, all the stuff that's going to prepare you for a rigorous course like Parsity, you should hit me up. Join the program. Go to parsity.io/apply. Now to the real subject. Do you really need a bootcamp to become a software engineer? No. If the answer wasn't obvious, no, of course you don't. It might seem like there's really only two viable paths into software, bootcamp or college degree. There is another way. In full disclosure, I did a bootcamp program myself almost 10 years ago. Now, the price was trivial compared to what most programs cost nowadays. I think the average cost of a full stack software engineering bootcamp is around $15,000 or $20,000. And people might say, wow, that's a ton of money. I want you to do a mental exercise with me. I want you to think about the current amount of money you're making. Now, I want you to imagine if you started on the low range of being a software developer. So let's say you make $50,000 or even $60,000 or even $70,000 or 80, whatever, right? And in your area, the average software developer with 2 to 3 years experience makes $100,000. And you think, okay, is that reasonable? Is that a reasonable figure for me to aspire to get? And in the Bay Area, I would say that's a low figure for you. If you're a software engineer, you should be in the mid hundreds, probably around your senior level of your career, maybe even up to $200K, which is crazy. I know if you're on the coast, these numbers are inflated. I'm in San Francisco Bay Area, so the number is wild compared to most places. But just think, okay, I'm in my current job, I make X amount. If I go to a software engineering program and I make X amount and I compound that amount and the raises I'll get over 10 years. So in 10 years, let's say you're sitting well at around 150K, no matter where in the United States you are, San Francisco, Bay Area, Seattle, maybe around 200K. So for $20,000, you basically bought a bunch of money over the course of 5 to 10 years, or way less, depending on your situation. Now, if that number is not significantly more than the cost of the program, then you've already made the decision. There's no point to go to the program. If you make $120,000 and you want to go to a coding bootcamp to make more money, you're probably not. So just don't do that if money is your only real motivator there. If you just want to learn, which is honestly fewer people, then yeah, do the program. So that's generally how I look at self-improvement courses and things like that. I think, okay, if I spend, $10,000 on ads, how much money will that return me over a year? If it returns me more money than the spending, then it's a no-brainer. The hard part is letting go of that money when you don't get a promise that it will be returned. So anyway, I get it. The price tags are phenomenal in some cases. I spent my life savings on the bootcamp, which at the time was $2,000. So my life savings was $2,000. That's all I had. I got that from basically not eating out for like a whole year. I was doing like 3 jobs, which is insane to me that I can only save up like $2,000 over 2 years with my bonuses and, working a regular job. It was really, really difficult. So anyway, at the time, that was a huge amount of money. And I'm like, I need to make this work. In the months leading up to the program, I studied a bunch. I spent my weekends and free time building sites. I already kind of knew how to build software at this point, as far as like really ugly websites. I knew some Bootstrap. I knew some jQuery. I knew some basic JavaScript. And I went to the bootcamp because I thought, well, they're going to fill in the gaps to what I need to know. I ended up getting hired 8 weeks into the program. And to be completely honest, I didn't learn much more than I already knew, but They gave me the confidence and a path to get hired. Meaning they sat me down. They said, Brian, you already know this stuff. Why aren't you applying? I'm like, well, I'm getting ready for this moment, right? I'm like, once I know this thing, then I'll go out and do it. And they said, no. Come into the office. They had an office in San Francisco. They said, sit down. You're going to apply in front of us and you're going to start applying for jobs. I did. And I ended up getting hired really quickly. I was way out of my league. I have an episode on that talking about my first day and week as a software developer. Super, super stressful. Boot camps in comparison are much more chill. The real game starts when you get that first job. So what did the boot camp really do in this case? And what does any boot camp do? Or college program, degree, mentorship, whatever. They provide a clear, well-defined path to proficiency and hireability. The world of web development is as wide as it is deep. So where do you start? What do you really need to know to get hired? If you get stuck on a problem, where do you go for help? This is something people don't think about enough. I've met a lot of people that don't want to go the bootcamp route, and some of them are mentees of mine in another program I have called JavaScriptProsApp.com. It's really for people that are into their career and want to work on really complex problems. But sometimes if I meet somebody online and I think this person just needs a little boost, I'll just invite them in. And one of the things I notice is they can spend weeks, days, months sometimes on a problem or just figuring out like what to do next, when literally a 5-minute conversation with somebody who's already been there and done it could have helped them. I've had this experience in my business. When I started doing business, meaning selling things on the internet, I had no clue. Over 3 years, I learned through a lot of trial and error. I also paid mentors, spent tens of thousands on mentorship, and that money has come back from that mentorship. And a lot of times, a 5 to 10 minute conversation was all that I needed to get unstuck. So they're saying, oh, you're running ads like this? Don't do that. Here's how you should run ads based on my years of experience. So without knowing where to start or where you need to go, it's easy to go down several rabbit holes and spend a year at the University of YouTube without a whole lot to show for your progress. And that is one of the issues I see very common. And most boot camps say, hey, we're full stack. But what does that mean exactly? What does full stack web development mean? What does full stack software engineering mean? Simply put, you have the skills to both work on the client side, think of the user interface or what a person actually sees when they go to a website, like all the buttons and colors and things like that. And they also have the ability to work on the server layer and the database layer. This is the thing that holds and stores data and persists it often in the cloud. There is no user interface to this typically. It is writing things that a user will interact with, but not visually on a screen. So just think databases and the cloud if that's going to help you out. That is a clear mental model for you. I would argue that few boot camps are truly full stack. I think Parsity is more full stack than most, but the front end tends to be a little easier. And the unfortunate thing is a lot of boot camps made a lot of money in the 2000s and going into the pandemic strictly doing front end. I think that time is coming a little bit to an end because most jobs want people that are full stack. So if you are considering going to a boot camp and it's not Parsity, make sure you're going to a full stack software engineering program. So, and if you're not, I'm going to tell you what I would learn in order. Now, this is the crazy part. I'm going to break it down for you. I've done this a few times, but I'm going to really break it down for you. So here's what I would learn in order. HTML and CSS. Install Visual Studio Code on your computer. Take Codecademy's course on HTML and CSS. Learn Bootstrap and probably learn Tailwind at this point. Understand how Flexbox works. Understand how to use media queries so that way your website looks good on a small screen and a big screen. Because one of the things I used to do when I was a hiring manager and people would send me their website is I would put it immediately into mobile view and see if things break. They often did. And that wasn't a great experience. And it sometimes made the difference between inviting them for an interview or saying, probably not. Next, create a basic site using HTML and CSS. Here's a fun one. Replicate a popular site. Something kind of simple, like the homepage of Airbnb, or maybe just the nav bar for Airbnb using HTML and CSS only. Now, update that same work using Bootstrap or Tailwind to make it responsive on different screen sizes. Next, Git and GitHub. Learn basic Git commands for pulling, pushing, and merging branches. Create a GitHub account and a repo for the sites that you created in the previous step, and update your projects often by pushing the changes up to your GitHub repo. Explore Git pages, create a quick draft of a page you made about yourself, and use Git pages to deploy it. This will teach you a whole lot about Git, GitHub, and putting your first website out for the world to see. I used to tell people they should learn jQuery. No, don't learn jQuery anymore. We've cut it out of Parsity. As a matter of fact, we just don't see a lot of value in teaching things like jQuery because they've just gotten kind of old school and really no one uses jQuery directly anymore. But as you can probably guess, you have to know JavaScript. So take Codecademy's course on JavaScript, look up how to use the fetch API and how to use APIs and how to make asynchronous requests and the promise API. If you can learn how to fetch data from an API and display it on the screen, that's an excellent thing to do. It's going to be fun. I have a video on it, as a matter of fact. If you want it, I'll put it in the show notes, and that will teach you how to do some really interesting stuff. Install Postman on your computer and practice querying APIs. It's a tool that you can use to basically let you test out APIs. And next, create a small app where the user can trigger a request to the New York Times API, which is free for the last time I checked. And there's a ton of free APIs out there. Check out the free ones and see if you can figure out how to play with them, get data, and then display it on the screen. And as a next step, figure out how to make it so a user can request a certain type of data. For example, at New York Times, a cool app might be you type in the word bacon and it sends you all the articles about bacon. Or maybe you look up crime statistics and you find a crime data API for your city or something like that. And if you're in New York or San Francisco, this could be really interesting because then you could mix it up with Google Maps or some other type of service and you could put like map markers for all the crime in your city or something like that, something really morbid like that you want to share with people. That would be kind of cool. Next, deployments. So take any of the projects that you've already made at this point and deploy them and use Netlify, maybe use Heroku. You know what? Don't use Heroku. Use Amazon Web Services or use render.com or use Vercel if you're using React and Next.js, which we'll get to in a second. Learn about branching strategies with Git and experiment with creating stage, development, master, main branches for your projects and how to deploy them. Think about why do people need certain branches? What is the point of this branch versus the other branch? What do these things do? What's the point of all this stuff? Why do you need branches? What are branching strategies? What are some good branching strategies that big teams use versus small teams? This is a hotly debated topic, honestly, and it will actually lead you down some interesting rabbit holes. Next, everybody's favorite, React.js. Before that, learn NPM, Node Package Manager, learn about node modules, learn about hooks, lifecycle events, the virtual DOM. In fact, you should look these things up and be able to explain them, maybe even over a video if you're feeling really brave, and tag me in it, I don't know, or send it to me and I'll give you some feedback on it. Recreate the project that was using the API from the previous step and now use Vercel, React, and Next.js to rebuild that same project and then deploy it on Vercel or deploy it on AWS or wherever you can. So you're using Next and React to build one of the projects that you previously built that was using basic HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, and some JavaScript, right? Now add some roots to your React project, meaning have it be a multi-page app. So you have like an about page or a search page or a bacon page or whatever page. Make sure you can have multiple pages because very few web apps you go to have a single page. I can't think of a single one out there. So make sure you have multiple pages out there and keep deploying, keep using Git, keep saving your work. And this is going to take you very far and get you more confident with Git because Git's one of those things that you have to stay in tune with, because it gets really difficult if you leave it alone for too long. It becomes scary and weird. And you're like, oh man, I don't really want to do this. I'll wait till the very end of the project. Don't do that. Make a commit to your GitHub repo every single day. And if not every single day, then I don't know, 2, 3, 4 times a week, do something like that. But don't let a whole week go by without committing to Git. That's crazy. Next, algorithms, or maybe not. I don't know. Skip algorithms if you want. If you want to learn algorithms, which I think you should because it will build up confidence. I do not think you're going to get too many of these in your interview, especially if you don't live on the coasts and you aren't going for high growth tech companies. I just don't think you're going to get this kind of stuff. Most of the people that I work with, that I mentor, and it's been a lot of them, let me tell you, and I've spoken with a few hundred of you out there, I just don't hear about people getting a lot of these questions. I hear about a very small percentage that live in San Francisco, New York, work for fintech or work for FANG. That means Facebook or Meta, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google, and related companies like that. I don't think you're going to get them. Still, learn the basics of big O notation, determine the run time and space-time complexity of the code which you write. This doesn't need to be a fancy algorithm style exercise. It's just like if you're at a function and it has 24 loops in it, well, what does that mean for how long this will run? What if the input grows? How does the function run then? This is important stuff to know. Learn about trees, learn about linked lists, learn about graphs, learn how to traverse these structures, learn how to build these structures from scratch. How do you do it in JavaScript? How do you do it in Python? Boom. You're going to feel way more confident that at least you have some knowledge of these things rather than saying, oh no, that's never going to come up in real life. I don't need to know that stuff. Don't be one of those people. It does come up sometimes, and sometimes you just want to feel confident enough to know what your coworkers are talking about. So why not take an hour or 2 or 3 to learn the basics of these things? I don't think you should do lead code often. I think maybe 1 question a day to attempt it will make you feel less nervous when you do come across these challenges, if you ever do. And lastly, my favorite one, create an account on pramp.com and do 1 mock interview a week if you are getting close to interviews. If you're not, this will just burn you out. I wouldn't suggest it, but it is my favorite site to practice. I just did this when I was on the job market recently. Okay, back to JavaScript. And you're going to keep going back to JavaScript over and over and over and over. So you learn about promises, async await, prototypal inheritance versus class inheritance. What is the difference between the two? Why do you care? Why does it matter? And always ask yourself that question. Why does any of this stuff matter? Who cares, right? If you don't know, then it's going to be really hard to make that emotional attachment. If somebody says, oh, this is how prototypal inheritance works, you're like, well, okay, but like, who cares? We'll look it up, figure out why and who cares. These are subjects that people write entire books about, including Kyle Simpson, who was on the show earlier this year. You should check that episode out. He is the godfather of JavaScript and the author of the You Don't Know JavaScript series. And you should read his book, You Don't Know JavaScript Up and Going, which is the first installment of the book, if I'm not mistaken. Practice your understanding of objects and classes. Do something like create a bank object with methods to support asynchronous withdrawals, deposits, a method to support your checking balance, and a check to ensure a user cannot withdraw more than they deposit. That's actually verbatim what I got asked in an interview. They said, make a bank class and it should support the following methods: withdrawals, deposits, and making sure the user can't withdraw more than they have. And the withdrawals will be asynchronous. If you can build that using a class, I think you're going to be in a good class of developers that know how to do that stuff. Learn the difference between call, bind, apply. Learn about closure. And now finally, use closure and figure out when it might be appropriate to use it. I added this stuff last after you've done a lot of building already, because I think that actually some of this stuff might be confusing if you're doing it on your own, which is the exact reason why at Parsity we do a lot of this stuff up front and we pair you with a mentor, because otherwise it can be really abstract. And if I'm honest, a lot of people do find this stuff really abstract, even at Parsity, and they're like, I don't really get it yet. That's okay. There's a lot of things in your career that you're going to keep going back to and back to and back to. Promises, closure, things with async in them, anything that's asynchronous, developers tend to get confused on. These are really common things that confuse people. So don't beat yourself up if you don't get this over the first 30 minutes or 30 days or even year that you're studying, because it can take a while and it just takes that muscle memory sometimes to figure out oh, that's how this thing works. Now, this is an incredibly opinionated list I've given you. It's mostly front-end focused because I just don't have the time, and I don't think you have the attention span for me to go really deep into all the back-end stuff you should probably know too. As a very, very short list, I would learn SQL, NoSQL, and how to deploy a database in the cloud, like using Mongo Cloud or something like that, and then make a full stack web app using the front end application you've already deployed, and then hook up a back end to it. And then I'd use Node and Express as the server side framework and language to use. Lastly, I might even use Python if you really want to experiment with a different language. Honestly, people out there bash on JavaScript for saying, oh, well, you should never write your back end in JavaScript. Why? Why should you not do that? NASA did it. Netflix does it. Tons of major companies have done it that I can't think of off the top of my head right now. But the fact that Netflix and NASA did it, come on. Are you serious? You think that your app is so much more special than these people? Never ceases to amaze me the geniuses out there on Twitter and LinkedIn that have these really opinionated opinions based on the two companies they've worked at in their whole lives. Anyway, so gave you a very opinionated list here. I'm happy to tell you more. I've spoken with a lot of cool people this week, and I just want to thank you for listening to this show. And if you've written to me, super appreciate that. I can't tell you how nice it is to, like, sometimes, we all feel down or might be at work struggling with a problem, and I'll get a really nice message from a listener saying, hey, I appreciate the episode you did, or hey, happy to connect with you, or even talk to me on the phone. It's just been a really fulfilling experience, and I'm really grateful that people are listening to this, and I really, truly hope people get something out of this. I always want to hear from you, especially if you have suggestions on things that you would like to know about. I've been doing this for a while. I'm telling you things that I think you should know based on my experience and my work with others, but I know that the landscape is constantly changing. I know that there are some things that I don't even know that people are struggling with that just might not make as much sense to me because I'm so deep in the code now. So hit me up and let me know. By the way, the self-taught route is not for everyone. It is truly not. In fact, it's for a minority of people. It's for people that have a long time in order to get the result they want, because this is not a fast path. Varsity boot camps, colleges, honestly, are a fast path. They'll say, we're going to get you from here to here, and we're going to make sure that you're on it. We're going to swarm on you and kind of make sure you're doing it. It's the reason that I buy a personal trainer rather than just kind of messing around in the gym. You could mess around in the gym for years and get the results you wanted to if you watched all the right YouTube videos, or more likely, you could go down several rabbit holes and never really find yourself in the place that you want to go. Now, I'm not saying JavaScriptProsApp.com is an alternative to something like Varsity, but I would like to open it up more, and I'm not going to open it up to just tons of people. But if that's something you're interested in, because it does give you Slack access, that's something I think you should consider, because that way at least you can get unstuck quickly and get an answer, within a reasonable amount of time, rather than trying to piece together information from shows like this, or YouTube, or Twitter, or LinkedIn, or your buddy down the street. Anyway, if you do choose to go this route, I would love to guide you as much as I can, and I've tried to write a lot of material out there about what I think. I also think there's a ton of good material out there that you can generally find about going that self-paced route. For the rest of us, consider Varsity, consider somebody else. I don't know, but hey, if you do want to join, do it fast, because we are closing down spots for the last cohort of the year. Thank you, and I'll see you around. That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. To learn more about becoming a software engineer with us, then check out Varsity.io. If you're not quite ready for that, then jump into our Dev30.xyz program, which is 30 days of working on your mindset, habits, and JavaScript skills. Totally worth it. See you next week.